let me introduce the topic and start the presentation later. The idea here is to have a different perspective of what's going on. Everybody knows what's happening with the coronavirus. Everybody knows about lockdown, these things about washing your hands, wearing a mask, or whatever precautions has been beaten to death. But we want to look beyond that. We want to look at some more interesting perspective. And in order to mitigate the possible risks and the impact of this, not only on our health, but also on the economy, on the community in general. I am certified advanced bioidentical hormone replacement therapy by World Link Academy in the USA. I'm also the chairman of the Indian Medical Association, the National for Functional Medicine. Now, I'm going to start off with a very positive note. The people will recover from this disease without needing any special, and an additional 15% will recover with some kind of special treatment, which would mean that we're looking at a mortality rate of only about 2%. So root cause is one of a pandemic. This has been the elephant in the room for a very, very long time, the insatiable desire to eat meat. So we believe that it's time for some disruptive thinking. Let's just take the facts. Farm animals are being crowded wing to wing, snout, and these are the ones that serve as amplifiers for the viral pandemics. And time and again, from 1918, 1997, then 2002 SARS, H1N1 swine flu, COVID-19, it's always been actually traced to animal markets where basically the animals have been bred for their meat, but in a very unnatural manner. So the question is that is this now the wake-up call, or are we going to wait for some more disasters to happen? If we have the will to shut down our entire society for weeks, and surely we have the will to slightly change our diets too. It does not mean we start giving up eating meat. It only means that stop growing them in this kind of unnatural fashion. I think that is one perspective that I want to bring in. Now look at the root cause number 2 of a pandemic, that this strain of influenza, basically influenza virus, they mutate every season. So we do not have specific immunity. The vaccines become ineffective.
Okay, I have not a question, but a clarification. From my understanding, the Spanish flu killed close to, above 50 million people. So
yes.
What sort of mortality rate was that as a percentage?
I don't actually remember, but I think the mortality was pretty high. But what was interesting, I took the Spanish flu in a different context, because I researched and tried to find out, did that also come from an animal source, and where did it originate? Now there are 3-4 different versions. One said that it originated in Kansas, in the USA, Kansas. The other said that it's Austria. Some said China. The China one very specifically said it emerged from the animals, also from fowl, poultry and the pigs. They didn't say it originated. They said that part of it was because of the World War I soldiers returning, and the living conditions where they were actually living together with the pigs and the fowl. So there's a sort of a connection there. Now let's take root cause number 2 of the pandemic, ever mutating, and therefore this is one of the challenges, and therefore we have to resort to out-of-box thinking. So what could it be? Should we vaccine and look at anti-inflammatory, look at chloroquine, how BCG, immune boosters, anti-HIV drugs, and focus on the treatment like it's happened in other diseases, or should we keep chasing that elusive vaccine? That's a question that we need to do, because in the box, it's always vaccine. We got to start thinking out of the box. The second thing is that certain sectors will have to reinvent themselves, because the root cause number 3 of the pandemic is extensive international travel, where the cabin air quality, and I'm glad we have Vaidyanathan with us, because he's an expert on air quality, and there's going to be a lot of talk on not just the air quality in terms of pollutants. It will actually be air quality in terms of the microbiomes floating around. Anyway, the case in point is the Spanish flu, where the returning troops of World War I caused the pandemic, and of course, air travel, tourism, cruise ships in case of COVID-19. So it's time to reinvent, and what we expect is that there would be a traveler screening very similar to the change that happened in the airline industry or the overseas travel after 9/11. We found the security systems completely changed, and new protocols introduced. We're going to see the same thing in terms of traveler screening, restrictions, closing of borders, novel methods to control the spread. Maybe air quality will be controlled within a closed environment, disinfection. The crews may be vaccinated, and caterers and food handlers, etc., would probably follow a much stricter regime. So I think there will be a lot of reinvention that we will see over here. The root cause number 4 of pandemic is community spread, which is increased person-to-person contact and in crowds. Now, in crowds, one of the interesting features is that wherever there is an air-conditioned or closed working space, the spread is always much more, and it's easy to understand why. But the question over here is, what are we going to do about it? We can't shut down malls, stadiums, marketplace, mass transport systems, etc. So we'll have to again redesign. All the design will have to change. People have to also redesign the way they work, working from home, telemedicine, conferencing like we're doing now, minimize the air conditioning that commutes wherever you can, and also how do you manage crowds in general, not only when there is a necessity. Coming to the root cause of 5 of the pandemic, it's that it happens within the hospital, and therefore there's going to be some smart designing and some staff training. This already happened, but that's going to evolve into a much more structured approach. And that would take care of outpatient interactions, the crowding of the beds, again, air quality. We come again and again back to this air quality because we're talking in terms of, with respect to the virus and particularly the influenza virus and not just the COVID-19. Taking care of cross-infection, the lack of the personal protective equipment. And at this point of time, they're so cumbersome that we are going to actually see some designing where perhaps this will become much lighter, much more effective. Barrier nursing will come in much more strictly. The work shift, doctors and nurses would be given enough rest. The biggest problem now is that many of them work on 24-hour shifts, and that's not fair. So we'll have to actually develop a set of protocols as to how will they staff themselves adequately and how do you plan this work shifting, and management of the inventory, of course. So coming to the root cause number 6 of the pandemic, the personal hygiene, habits, and tradition. Now here, of course, there's no other way. We just have to embrace change. Everybody knows that, nobody likes change, but we just have to embrace the change. So one would be, of course, a simple thing that the namaste, which has become a novelty, or non-touch ways of greeting. I think that's going to be very popular and people will accept it very easily, and that's already happening. Habits like sneezing, coughing, spitting, urinating in public. So all these things are now, I think awareness is so strong that everybody knows, and there will be some, hopefully after the lockdown and after the entire this crisis is over, we will see some habits that will continue, but it will need a lot of infrastructure development to be able to help people do that. I think they will have to get into a little bit harsher policing and legislation, because once the crisis is over, the tendency for human race is to forget and forget the past. So I think we should welcome a little bit of quote unquote lack of freedom or arrogance from the police. The question is, during the lockdown period of the pandemic, this is the time we have to prepare for the post-lockdown. So the most important perspective of this first presentation of the series of mine is that the preparation starts now, and for that we need to have an understanding of what are the possible scenarios in the future. And those scenarios would be like this. This is probably the most important slide that summarizes my entire talk. Actually, I'm going to use a pointer over here. So let me show you that this is where we are. We are all looking at the coronavirus. This is peaking, and everybody expects that this is going to, eventually it's a matter of time. Everybody says whatever happens, matter of time. But what is also expected is this may not go down that smoothly. You may have one more peak over here, you may have another peak over here, and that's how it may go. But what will happen over here is, because all the resources and the attention is going towards the first wave of this, what is called as the COVID-19, we will see some other condition. Let's say somebody has dialysis, diabetes, complications of those not related to COVID. They will start in the rise because of neglect and all the healthcare stuff going in that direction. And we will see a rise that will happen much later. Again, hopefully this rise should not be very much, because we should be preparing for this. Already, if we are prepared for this, we should be able to flatten this curve easier and take care of those. Then comes a third wave. There will be people with chronic conditions, not the ones with diseases, but they will be senior citizens where they had interrupted care, places where people did not get physiotherapy and therefore their condition worsened, and we will have to deal with them also separately. So there will be 3 categories as far as healthcare is concerned. This is going to be a very interesting category. We've already seen the impact, and this impact is basically on the psychological, the psychic trauma, mental illness, economic injury, and the burnouts. We're already seeing this happening, particularly among the healthcare professionals and the doctors. So what is happening is, and the business is going down. economy going down. So we expect this is going to be, and very optimistically, we think that it's going to flatten out with time. But believe me, this could just keep rising like this. If we plan at this stage, and this is going to be my most important perspective for this particular talk, I think that we should be able to mitigate or at least mitigate the risk and perhaps the impact and reduce the damage that it will cause. I'll go to the next one. But it all depends upon where we want to be. If majority of us wants to be in this stage of fear and basically look at what's happening in the news, watching the news all the time, it's all about me, I, we, and therefore we don't want to get out of our comfort zone. I'm afraid that's not going to help us. Some of us may go into the stage of learning where it will become us and community around us. And there will be a little bit of judgment, positive thinking, getting rid of all the so-called fake news, using our judgment planning to the next stage of growth. And if we get into the stage of growth quickly, most important thing is start thinking of community, the environment factors. What was the reason? Now again, it's a wake-up call. What do we do about the flora and fauna? Do we get back to give more attention to the environmental changes? Do we look at the planet as a whole? So all that will start coming over here. What I believe is that in general, before the crisis, there were very few in the stage of growth. Most of us were in the stage of learning. We would need to push all of maximum number of people in the stage of growth to a stage where we don't have to worry about such new crisis may come, but it is not such crisis anymore. And we can conquer this. Now, let us take the impact on healthcare. So again, COVID-19 impact number one on healthcare is, this is a statement I've often made, that the hospital as we now see it, or in the avatar that we now see it, will cease to exist. And it will not exist in its present avatar. What will happen is medical consultation will move on an online platform. Hospitals will transform into units for surgical procedures. Home healthcare will flourish. Ecosystem will become, this is very important, holistic and patient-centered. And it will be technology that will drive the change. And we can see that's happening. Last 2 weeks, I've seen that happening, and we all have seen it happening. New skills and tools will develop, but it will all depend upon the flexibility and agility of any industry. So I'm not looking at individual, I'm looking at hospital or the healthcare as an industry. So if we are going to be agile and flexible, yes, we are going to be successful. If we are not, then probably, I don't know, we'll perish, or we will probably learn the hard way. I have no idea what happens if we do not adapt very soon. There will also be a lot of change in the medical education transform very rapidly. A lot of people will have to actually embrace all forms of medicine, even alternative medicine. We won't have a choice because, something we have to introspect. Introspection is already started. The FDA will come under the scanner. All our protocols will come under the scanner. That are these protocols actually protecting us? Are they useful, or are they only protecting pharma companies? Contingency plan. Can we short circuit some of those protocols? So right now, a lot of things, a simple thing like a vaccine is not that it can't be available, but it will take 1 year if you go through the normal FDA protocol. So these are the things that in future we may not have the luxury of having that kind of time. Regulatory guidelines will have to be revised and speeded up, and all those artificial intelligence will have to come, and various scenarios will have to look into this. Healthcare will evolve rapidly to best suit this century. So previous century was all about metabolic disorders. The century before that was about infective diseases. 21st century is all about mental health. The majority of the focus is going to be on wellness, prevention, and mental health. So we're going to see things like nutritional supplementation, hormone balance, immunity modulation. And the reason I specifically chose this is what I basically do. This is what Belsante basically does. I'm sure there are other things also that can be done, but these are the things that are fundamental to all healthcare systems. On this, there could be a lot of things we can build on. Impact number 3, new perspectives, new mindset. We'll all have to change our mindset and new ways of engaging. So maybe we have to just forget the vaccine thing, get out of the box, no more vaccines. Can we approach all infection through an immunity boosting model? Can we look at the role of vitamin D, vitamin C, curcumin in terms of the immunity? Now I'm taking immunity as one of the examples. There are people who may be thinking of different models, but I'm always thinking in terms of immunity. Will melatonin, the hormone melatonin, play a role? Can hydroxychloroquine or BCG help in reducing morbidity and mortality? And how good, or what are we going to do? Is the plasma therapy going to be a very good breakthrough? And can we start, looking at research in that direction? So entire mindset will have to change, and those regulatory bodies that are coming in the way of progress under the excuse that we are here to protect the public. has been a huge disadvantage this time. Therefore, when these protocols and regulations are coming in the scanner, I think there'll be a lot of introspection that we need to do and change our mindset over here. But as of now, yes, they are relaxing, saying that this is a crisis, but I really don't know whether the system is in place to take charge of that, because the triggers are still the same. The old triggers are there. So, for example, scope for disruptive thinking. So, let me create a disruptive thinking as an example. Disruptive thinking is, can we modulate individual immunity and herd immunity that is not virus specific in such a way that it is not to do with this virus or in fact virus in general. So let's take flu virus, the general flu virus and COVID-19. If you look at the mortality by age, let's take age as a factor. This is only an example, so don't go so much by the numbers presented here. So the usual flu attacks 65 plus 0.83% mortality. But look what happens with COVID. COVID has, or these pandemics are usually that it attacks all the ages, and suddenly in the 50 plus age, you can see this spiking up here to 14.8%. Now keep this in mind. This is the data that we're getting, dynamic data from various places. Again, as an example, I'm just picking a few data. There's much more. This is just to simplify the analysis. There's a very interesting observation that none of the pregnant women infected by COVID-19 admitted in Zhunan Hospital in Wuhan developed severe pneumonia or died. Very interesting. None of the pregnant women, I would have thought that they are at higher risk, nor were the babies infected. Again, I would have thought that a higher risk. So what is it that the pregnant women and babies have different? Let us take that for a hypothesis that is the melatonin. Melatonin starts, early age, around 3-4 months later, and it peaks by 6 years of age, and then it starts falling as you age. It starts going down. Okay, so this is the typical way in which the melatonin goes. I'm just taking melatonin as an example. Now, if you juxtaposition this melatonin against the mortality rate, it's quite uncanny how this decrease results in an increase in mortality. So, if the melatonin in immunity and in inflammation, melatonin controls something called as a cytokine storm. Forget about what it is technically, but what really kills people in the COVID-19 or any of the influenza viruses is the storm, the anti-inflammatory storm. So we are not talking about prevention of the disease, but the prevention of the complications or the morbidity and mortality of the disease. So if you look at morbidity and mortality, it looks like melatonin plays an important role. So can melatonin be used therapeutically in this or not? So these questions will come about. If you ask me, today, because melatonin is used for people who want to get over jet lag, people who are want natural sleep. So I have no hesitation in prescribing melatonin for those, even if it means that it gives them sleep and that sleep improves the immunity. But this is the kind of example. This is the kind of lateral thinking, out of the box thinking, and innovations that will have to come. Of course, there'll have to be a research on this that we got in this period of a few months will really be useful to us if we really analyze it and hopefully draw some good conclusions on that. That will help us. Lastly, coming to community immunity, Suvidha is the place where we live. Suvidha is a very good example. We are going back to nature habitat because one of the best ways, of course, is to live in a pristine environment with such greenery and fresh air, which is actually the luxury. We don't have to have a very high-end type of accommodation, but the nature around us should definitely be positive as far as health is concerned. Healthier lifestyles, reinventing the medical protocols are disruptive as far as medical protocols go, because old protocols have only hindered us. They've never helped us. Unfortunately, it's just control. It's all about control. The old medical protocols, who's in control? Is it the Ministry of Health? Is it the FDA? Everybody wants control. And lastly, of course, what I believe very strongly are the immune modulation supplements, which we are actually making and shipping to our patients who want it all over India. Enough research done on vitamin D, vitamin C, etc. This is the kind of doses recommend. Take it for a period of 3 months and rest assured that at least theoretically you have some protection against this. Whether you take melatonin, whether you take, yes, I will recommend chloroquine for anybody who's got a higher risk, senior citizen or somebody with a existing lung condition. But remember, the protective dose, prophylactic dose, and the treatment dose are vary. So you should never be confused. Make sure that you have a prescription from a doctor. And as I say again, the mental health challenge will be the biggest, and this will be a huge challenge. A new world order, as I said, will emerge after COVID-19. There hopefully will be some transformational learning giving rise to paradigm shift and cause the change. But in short, we'll have cleaner people, cleaner environment, there'll be tougher laws, more digital world, and preventive healthcare and wellness. However, economy and politics will just remain volatile. I think that will never change. Thank you very much, and I'm ready to take questions.